Okay. All right, so for those of you who are here this morning, I brought in this model, and for those of you who weren't, I brought in this model. So this is a model of the temple in Jerusalem. I mentioned this morning it was the largest structure in the entire Roman Empire, which is part of why it was such an object of hatred, really, for the Romans, why they tried to burn it down. It was so large that they couldn't burn it all, which is why the Western Wall is left. Herod, by the way, who expanded and built the temple and built the Western Wall, was such an amazing engineer that when the Greeks were staging the Olympics in Greece, they imported Herod as the general contractor to build the site. So it gives you an image. So here's this wealthy king wanting to show off to all the rest of the nations, and he expands the Temple Mount into this, and then these huge outer walls. So if you can picture a hillside, I want this to fall. All right, here's a hillside. Here's where the temple had always been, Solomon's temple. Herod wants to expand the whole compound, but he's got a hillside. So he literally builds a wall up here, which is the Western Wall, and then does backfill and fills it all in with earth so that he can then expand the Temple Mount. You know, I mean, even now it would be a huge construction project. So you can imagine 2,000 years ago. So they don't even know really how all those stones were brought up to the site in Jerusalem. He builds this retaining wall, expands the whole platform, and expands the temple. So in here is the Holy of Holies, where only the chief Kohen could go, and only on Yom Kippur. Out here are courtyards, which could hold 5,000 people at a time. Imagine at the 3 holidays, you know, what we call Aliyat Regel, going up to Jerusalem. You have hundreds of thousands of people suddenly in Jerusalem, and this compound has to be able to maintain it. By the way, there were kings, non-Jewish kings, and people that came from around the Mediterranean. One of the few pieces with an inscription that's been found in the rubble was actually a stone that says, and it was in one of the courtyards, beyond this point, non-Jews are not allowed to proceed on penalty of death. Okay, you don't need a sign like that if non-Jews aren't coming. So it's it's proof that this was really a site that people would come, and in fact, kings would come from around the Mediterranean also to offer sacrifices. So they were allowed it to a certain level. There was also, as a PS, and this is important for conservative and reform Jews, there was a courtyard referred to as the Ezer Nashim, which was the courtyard of the women. That has been used as the premise for why men and women have to sit separately in synagogue, because they say, look, they were separated at the temple. However, there is all kinds of documentation that while it was a court that women went to, there were also men and women in that court who used it together. Just almost contemporaneous, again, the next 200 years after the destruction of the temple, there are inscriptions in old synagogues that show women as the equivalent of what we would have as the president of the synagogue, women who had donated the money for synagogues and were therefore in charge of what went on. So although there was a women's courtyard, it wasn't a fully segregated kind of place for prayer. So imagine everything that you do that's Jewish is in this building. There's very little prayer. The 10 Commandments were recited. Baruch Hu was said. You know, when we say Baruch Hu, that was a call for all the Kohanim to come together. And very little else, and everything is sacrificed. And now imagine that this is burned to the ground. Hundreds of thousands of people are taken away. And what do you have? You question, what do you have left of Judaism? Yeah?
Isn't it true that
there was a diaspora. Yeah.
Even before the destruction of the Second
Yeah.
Temple, there were already diaspora communities?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Rome, in fact, Rome was 10% Jewish.
I see. And so the establishment of synagogues really took place before the destruction of the temple.
There are synagogues. It's not clear if they were actually like what we call a synagogue, but they were gathering places. Like they were Beit Knesset, a place to gather.
Right.
But there wasn't a lot of prayer. So
in
maybe
the
a study. We don't know exactly.
Even in the Galil and in what
Oh, yeah.
would now be the Golan,
Right.
there were Batei Knesset, so to speak.
Right, places of gathering.
Right, where you read or you sang or you remembered or whatever it is.
So,
When you didn't bring sacrifices there because you were not supposed to.
right, you're not supposed to bring a sacrifice anywhere but here. So what I'd like to add to these comments is that even if you're in the Galil or in Alexandria and you're in a gathering place, you know that you're a satellite of this place. That this is the real Jewish, I don't want to say culture. They use the word cult, which I don't like. But this was Jewish practice, and you're wherever you are in your Beit Knesset, but you're relating to this place, and then it's gone. So when it's gone, then what do? We had a reading this morning where one rabbi says, look, we can atone by loving kindness, that's how we treat people. Really, the birth of what we call Judaism is after the destruction of this temple. What you have here is a religion of animal sacrifice. What we have nowadays is a development of what you do when there isn't animal sacrifice. So everything we're doing is in memory of this building being lost, and yet you know the adage, when you break a bone and the bone mends, that where the crack is that's mended is actually the strongest place in the whole bone. So I had that image this morning. I was thinking about this, that the Judaism that we have is like the mended crack of that building that's broken, and then what we've created is a thing that can survive everywhere. So I have some text I want to give out. There it is, right here. And I want to look at what it was like between the two temples when people are in exile but hoping to go back. And again, it's the birth of who we are. So you could take one and pass them. I may not have enough because we're a bumper crowd here. So.
Well, the fact is, Babylon
We may have to
had
share a
an
little bit.
ongoing-
I'll take one and pass them.
Babylon had an ongoing community from way back.
Oh, sure, yeah, and again, Alexandria, Alexandrine. Yeah.
Even not Memphis, there was another place, started with a T.
India had Jewish
got one,
communities,
too.
they claim.
Two or one?
It's a staple. See how they go around, if we have enough, and if we need to, we'll share.
Right.
Need to come here and
Are people gonna be able to read this? Take a look when you find
Oh,
it. No?
I'm putting my face.
Susan, was there one more light that could be on without all of them? Is that doable? I think people are gonna have a problem reading. I'm having a problem reading.
At all.
Do you need a flashlight?
Well, I'd rather there'd be enough light for everybody. We don't have like 30 flashlights, right?
No, but if you need.
Yeah, no, but I want everyone, if I can't read, I imagine other people can't read.
Keep passing it around.
People can take their
Yeah, that's better, thank you.
Take their phones.
Okay, so have they all gone around? No. They're still being passed?
Almost.
Okay. All right, so take a look. They're still going around? All right, take a look at the front page of the little package. Very famous Jewish poet, Rav Yehuda Halevi, lives in Spain. So when we think of the Inquisition, there's a passage from Muslim Spain to, they call that the Christianity reconquers Spain. So he's still living in the Spain that's under Muslim rule. And let's take a look. My heart is in the east, yet I am in the utmost west. I'm stuck out in this western outpost, which is Spain. But really, where do I belong? My heart's in the east. Okay, and I might have mentioned this morning, I learned this very young. I think we were about 10 or 11. And anywhere when I've not felt at home in my life, I've thought of that line. You know, like my heart's somewhere, but I'm stuck here. It's just such a, to me, a very searing line. So my heart's in the east, but I'm in the west. How can I taste food that I eat? Could it bring me any rest? So the very height of Jewish civilization, kind of between 1000 and maybe 1300, are the Jews of Spain. They're in charge of finances, they're in charge of poetry, they're mathematicians, they're writers, they write Arabic poetry, as well as a very developed Jewish studies. In fact, when the very year that the Jews were being expelled from Spain, who was in charge of all the king's finances was a Jewish financier who tried to bribe the king to let the Jews stay. I mean, it shows you how, how kind of pivotal it was. They're still in charge of all the king's money in the very year that we're all being expelled. Okay, so it was through the late 1300s and early 1400s, there began to be a resentment by the Spanish of how well Jews were doing, and that eventually leads to this full-fledged Inquisition. All right, so how can I taste the food I eat? Would it bring me any rest? Is there any pleasure in these joys of Spain when my heart's back there? The vows and oaths I've sworn, can I heed them as I must? And then listen to the two empires. While Zion, while Palestine, is bound with Christian ropes, so post the Inquisition, the Crusades, so the Christians have reconquered Jerusalem, and there's Arab chains where I am. So the Muslims are in charge of the West, and the Christians have retaken Spain, Jerusalem, and my heart's there, and there's no freedom anywhere that I can look. It seems as easy in my eyes to leave the charms of Spain, as precious as my eyes would be to find the ruined temple's dust. That temple, which has been decomposing after being burned from the year 70, I would rather see the dust from that destruction than to have all the joys that I know are available to me to Spain. Okay, so that's in the 1100s. Let's turn the page. So now we're going to go way back. This is from the prophet Jeremiah. I know, when the prophets are mentioned, it's so hard to keep track of who's who and where. So Jeremiah is among the group who are expelled when the first temple is destroyed. Okay, the first temple is destroyed by the Babylonians. Again, huge numbers of Jews are taken out to Babylonia, and he's in that group. So he's prophesying both before the destruction and then in Babylonia post-destruction. Okay, so let's take a look at the English. For so said the Lord, for at the completion of 70 years from Nebuchadnezzar, there's a Babylonian king in Babylon, I will remember you and will fulfill for you. So he's saying, you're expelled, we're in this wrong place, but it's not forever. We'll be here for 70 years, which is in fact the time that they were there, until Cyrus proclaims that the Jews can go back. All right. The second line, verse 11, for I know the designs that I am devising in your regard. So who's talking here? Who do you think? I mean, it's the prophet, but whose words is he saying?
Well, the utterance of the Lord.
He's talking for God. So God's saying, I know you're in exile, but I'm remembering you, and it's not permanent. It's just 70 years. For I know the designs I'm devising in your regard, the utterance of the Lord, designs of peace and not for evil. So this is not the end of the road. There's good coming. For peace and not for evil, to give you a remnant and a hope. Okay, let's go down to where the bold is, the verse 14. And I will be found for you. I'm not a lost God to you. It's almost like when God in the burning bush says to Moses, go back there. Like, I've heard the voices of the suffering. You're going to come out. It's not forever. It's very reminiscent. So I will be found for you. I will make myself available to you, and I will answer you. The utterance of the Lord, I will restore your returnees. So there will be people who will go back. And by the way, not everybody went back. In fact, a small percentage went back. So as a kid, I used to think how terrible you could finally go back. But then look at all of us. 1948, you didn't have 10 million Jews suddenly showing up in Israel. People are push-pull, they're comfortable, they're not so comfortable, it's hard to move, you support the country. We're in all the same push-pulls that these Jews in Babylon are in when they finally are allowed to go back. Which in a way makes this a very relevant day. So I will gather you from the nations and from all the places to which I have banished you. The utterance of the Lord, again, it's God saying, I will restore you to the place from which I exiled you. It's still my land, I'm still your God, you're still my people, this is temporary. Okay, so a couple questions. 70 years, how many generations do you think that is? 2.5?
It's actually 50 to Cyrus. Until they went back, Cyrus was 50 years now.
Okay, so we'll use 70 as a kind of general
right,
exile. All right, so how many generations have we got? 2.5, so you got parents, children, grandchildren?
3 easily.
More maybe?
In those
3?
days,
Okay.
3.
Yeah, if you have children when you're 19 or 20, yeah, 3 or 4. Okay, so first question. So the people who are exiled, imagine that you're in that group. Do you imagine that your children or grandchildren will ever get back? What do you think?
Not
Not ever?
Well, at least not immediately, because you know that the place was totally destroyed, so
Yeah, places in ruins.
that's not happening. It's happening later rather than sooner.
Yeah, if ever.
You have to be a Zionist.
To design, that's right, right. Yeah, your places in ruins. You've been brought as prisoners. You know, I always think like in 1944, someone could have said to the people behind the barbed wire in those camps, "There'll be an air force of Jews in 4 years." You know, it's like impossible.
You're right.
So imagine here, you know, they've been brought in chains. So it'd be very hard, I think, to picture your children or your grandchildren would ever get there. So here's a question. The prophet's saying it's going to be 70 years. What do you think would be different for the Jews there if he'd said, this is it, this is permanent, versus he says you're here for 70 years? How do you, what kind of Jewish life would those people create if he says you're here 70 years, or if he says, you know what, never going to be a temple again, this is it? What might happen differently one way or the other? Yeah.
One thing I could see happening is if people feel that the religion's going to die with them,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't fight assimilation or conversion to other religions.
They
because
would. Is that what you're saying?
They probably would. I said they wouldn't
Yeah.
fight it.
They wouldn't
it'd be
fight
like,
it, right.
Well, let's say their kid falls in love with someone from, it would be like, well, we're ending anyway.
We're
so
lost anyway, yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And
Something
if all
like
we
that.
do is temple sacrifice and we're not going to have that, yeah. Okay. Anybody else? So if the prophet said this is it, yeah.
Okay, if they're given a number, the 70 years, so
Right.
there's a light on the end of the tunnel. They know they're gonna come back.
Yeah.
Some of them.
So,
Yeah. Some.
and
Yeah. Or
if
there'll
they-
be.
yeah,
really-
some of them,
That's
not
it,
all of
that's
them.
it.
Yeah.
but-
So how would that change the kind of life they would create if they know there's a light at the
Well,
end
they
of the
know
tunnel?
they're here, they're temporary.
Okay.
Another subject could be if they say, oh, you're permanent, they might fight. They're not assimilate, they actually do different things.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
We have nothing to lose, I mean, we might
Interesting.
fight to get out.
So one view is if we're here permanently, what the heck? Let's just assimilate. Another view is if we're here permanently, let's fight. It's interesting.
We wanna
Yeah.
get out.
No,
Yeah.
but if we're here permanently, not everybody went in chains, the farmer stayed. As a matter of fact, Jeremiah told his intendant or scribe to buy land.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give up on what's left behind,
Right.
because the Am Ha'aretz stayed behind.
Right.
There is something to go back to, so we have to maintain some commonality.
Mm.
uh,
Which is also a very contemporary issue.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's a major issue now, how Israelis and Americans get their thoughts,
Right.
at least running along the same rails.
Which is part of the
Who's
issue we
buying
talked
the
about this
land?
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's buying the land? In the land of Israel or
Yes.
in Babylonia?
No, in
Israel.
In what Judah, in
Yeah.
Judea.
So Barry, what you want to picture? Who they took to Babylonia were all the
The
upper
idea,
classes.
the fancy, the
They
important-
wanted to take the powerful people
Powerful
away
people, the
to
city
destroy the
people.
power
Cut the head
base.
off.
Yeah, cut the head off. And who they left were the peasants and the poor people and the people, you know, in the north and the not so important places. So they took the aristocracy, the wealthy, and dragged them off to Babylonia. So
And
he's
the
saying to his
king
servant,
blinded.
"The land's going to be cheap, you know, buy now, and
Buy
maybe we're
now."
coming back." Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
north, we said the north, but the kingdom of Israel in the north had already been
We
destroyed.
already had been
I think it
sorted.
was 700 BCE. if I
Right,
remember.
right. Yeah. So this is what's left, and then it's
Right.
gone. Okay. Anybody else on the difference if the prophet says this is it, we're here forever, versus we're going to be here 70 years? What kind
What
of?
kind of prophet would they be? I mean, you know, a prophet is a person who gives a view of something that is totally, was supposed to, totally different from what is plain and obvious in front of you. I mean, there's no inspiration to say that, you know, this is, you know, that nothing's gonna get better than this.
So it wouldn't be uplifting.
Well, he wouldn't be a prophet, I mean,
Well, there are prophets who would say, you know, if you've followed this, you know, there's going to be total destruction. There are lots of prophecies that have that tone.
right?
So,
There would be no, you know, at the point of a diaspora,
right.
you know, he would be totally destroyed. It would be a total destruction of hope, in which case you
Right.
say like.
Okay, so then in which case, what would it be like to be in Babylonia? What would you
Make the
do?
best of it.
Make the best of
I
it,
mean,
and
you're
what would that?
losing hope. You're
Nope.
losing hope to return.
Okay, so what does make the best of it look like?
Well, if people of means They may try take this. They have their skills.
Right.
They may try to reinvent them if the environment or the civilization is friendly.
Where they are, yeah.
Yes.
As
Yeah.
a matter of fact, they built a different kind of Judaism as a temporary or possibly enduring format for themselves,
Sure.
which then produced the greatest scholars, far greater than the Palestinian, the local ones, yeah.
Right, sure.
And remained in power for the next 1,1200 years.
Right. So the second and third generation did very well in Babylonia. And what Chava's alluding to, their scholarship was often superior to what was going on in Palestine because they were they were affluent, they were doing well. You know, when you have funds, you can publish. Yeah.
So can we deduce from that rather than giving up, they maybe ramped up? They said, we're supposed to come back.
Yeah.
We need to get ready if in case.
Get ready and invent a life that works now.
It works
Right.
now.
And that's where the production of a
And
new
became
kind of
the format
Judaism.
for
Yeah.
diaspora life everywhere after
Right.
there was no temple.
Absolutely. So let's turn to the next page on that
Does
note.
that mean that the children, 2 generations removed, will have the same desire in their hearts to return?
That's the question.
Either yes or
If
no.
That's the
things
question.
are getting better in
Yeah.
Babylonia or wherever it is,
Yeah.
you set your new life there.
Yeah.
Because and the hope to return is
Sure, the homeland gets more and more distant as a memory. It's a
distant,
memory.
right.
Yeah. You know, there's an interesting theory that I read that the Purim story was created in Babylonia. Why? Think of the Purim story. The Jews are under rulership. Mordechai is so influential that the top guy is worrying about whether he'll bow to him or not. The king, at the beginning of the Purim story, has a huge feast. Who's there? All the Jews are there. They're drinking and they're partying at royal parties, so that for the Babylonian Jews, it was very comforting to have a story where Jews end up okay at the end by staying somewhere that wasn't going back to
What were the
Palestine.
names they had?
Yeah, the names of the months, sure.
No, the names. The
Mordechai.
names were Marduk.
Yeah.
Marduk and
Ashtar.
So yeah,
That wasn't terribly-
Hadassah is it's not.
Well, that was-
Esther
the
is
Jewish
not
name
Hebrew. Yeah.
was- the Jewish name was
Yeah, the
Hadassah.
Jewish name, right. Okay, so let's take a look at this next page, also from Jeremiah. Okay, but at a different stage. All right, there we go, next page. For so said the Lord, at the completion of 70 years, I will remember you. Wait, I'm sorry, am I on the same page? Yeah, I said that. You gotta watch those rabbis, they repeat themselves. Okay, next page. Okay. Yeah, okay, now, so here is kind of what we were talking about. Jeremiah's looking at these people, they're in exile, and he's giving them instructions on how to build a life. So said the Lord of hosts, God of Israel, to the entire exile, I exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and dwell in permanent residence. Plant gardens, eat their fruit. Let's go on to where the bold is. Take wives, beget sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons, give your daughters to husbands, that they bear sons and daughters. Have children, multiply, make the next generation happen, and do not be diminished. You know, if you give up, you're diminished, you're gone, you disappear, which is what happened to the other kingdom. They just disappeared. Don't be diminished. And then verse 7, and moreover, this is very interesting, seek the peace of the city to which I exiled you. Why? Why is that good for the Jews?
It's protection.
It's where you're living now. If that city does well, you do well now. You know, if Washington's doing well, we do well. Washington's in trouble, we're in trouble. So the very people who represent your exile, after they become your home, it's really important that they do well for your sake. And then the last line, as in its peace, there will be peace for you. So what's this later attitude of Jeremiah? What's he telling the people?
It's a revision.
Sorry?
It's kind of a revision.
Yeah, a revision to what?
Make the best of what you
Yeah,
got.
about returning.
Yeah,
No,
right now you're
while-
here.
While you're there.
While you're here, make it good. You're still going to go back, but don't disappear, and also don't stay in mourning. There's a famous text where rabbis are talking about, the destruction of the temple, we should never drink wine again, we should never eat meat again. And then so sarcastically, the response is, well, maybe we should never breathe again, maybe we should never have water. You can't, you got to live.
It'll disappear.
Yeah, you won't. Yeah, so we have Tisha B'Av, but we have the rest of the year where you live and you prosper and you do well. So with the promise of return is while you're there, do well. And this part is earlier than the promise for return. All right, we've got. Is it on the page?
That's it.
No, that's where I was going to stop. Okay. All right, so the cantors brought in a piece also related to Tisha B'Av, and then after that we'll go to Echa.
Okay.
So there is, I don't know if this comes from the Sacred Harp hymnal, whatever, but it's, we'll get a chance to try to sing it. I want you to listen to it, and then after we've tried our best, you'll listen to how it actually sounds by that great Jewish performer Don McLean. So take a look. I mean, it's right from the text that we have on our Babel. So this is how it goes. By the waters of Babylon, we lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. And it can be sung, as you'll hear in just a moment, as a round. Do you want to try it?
Why don't we try it first?
Yeah. By the waters of Babylon, we lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. And if you ever go to a Sacred Harp sing in the South, this is how it'll sound.
I joined Uber 9
Sorry.
months ago, CEO.
First you got to get there,
First thing
right?
that was important for me to change was
Sit
the
there
culture
for
of it.
seconds.
Like
My
this.
Uber license.
Like this. Just follow along. Sorry, it's live.
That's good.
Good.
Waters of Babylon. The waters of Babylon. We lay down and wept for thee, Zion.
Dulcimer.
Sounds like it.
The last verse
The waters of Babylon. I, the waters of Babylon. We lay down and wept and wept for thee, Zion. So maybe next year we'll prepare it and we'll sing it as a round.
Nice, nice.
Very, very nice.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So we're going to turn to Echa, which is on page 35 in your book. The word Echa, by the way, they translate as alas, but literally means, how could it be? They just are incredulous at what they're looking at, which is this destruction. Echa, how could it be? Page 35.
How terrible is the phrase.
Echai Yashiv Abadar Hayir Rabat Yam Ayeta Kalmana Rabati Vagoyim Sarati Bamedinot Ayeta Lamas Bachot Yivchem Alayla V'dimata alecheya elah menachem mikol oaveha kol reyeha bagduva hayula leoyevim galata yuda meyoni umerov avoda hi yasheva vagoyim לא מצאה מנוח, כל רודפיה השיגוה בין המצרים, דרכי ציון אבלות, מבלי באי מועד, כל שעריה שוממים, כהניה נאנחים. בתולותיה נוגות והיא מרלה. היו צריה לראש אויביה שלום, כי אדוני הוגה על רוב פשעיה. עול עליה, הלכו שבי לפני צהר. ויצא מבת ציון כל הדרה, היו שריה, כי איילים לא מצאו מרעב, וילכו בלא כוח לפני רודף. זכרה ירושלים ימי עוניה ומרודיה, כל מחמודיה, אשר היו מימי קדם, בנפול עמה ביד צר, ואין עוזר לה, ראו הצרים, שחקו על משפטיה. חטא חטאה ירושלים, על כן נדהייתה. כה מכבדיה הזילוה, כי ראו ערוותה. גם היא נאנחה, ותשוב אחור. טומאתה ושוליה לא זכרה, אחריתה ותרד פלאים, אי מנחם לה, ואי אדוני את עוני, כי הגדיל אויב. ידו פרס צר על כל מחמדיה, קירת הגויים באו מתשה, אשר ציווית לא יבוא בקהל לה. כל המנחים מבקשים לחם, נתנו מחמדיהם, ואוכל להשיב נפש לאדוני והביטה, כי הייתי זוללה. לא עליכם כל עוברי דרך, הביטו אם יש מכאוב כמכאובי, אשר עולה לי, אשר הוגה אדוני ביום חרון אפו. ממרום
Top of 37.
שלח אש בעצמותיי, וירדנה פרס רשת רגליי, השיבני אחור, נתנני שוממה כל היום דבר. נשקד עול פשעי בידו, יסתרגו עלו על צווארי, יכשיל כוחי. נתנני אדוני בידי לא אוכל קום, צילה כל אבירי אדוני בקרבי, קרא עלי מועד לשבור בחורי, גד דרך אדוני לבתולד בת יהודה. הלילה אני בבוכיה, עיני ירד המים, כי רחק ממני. מנחם משיב נפשי, היו בניי שוממים, כי גבר אויב. פרסת ציון בידיה, אין מנחם לה ציווה אדוני.